Tech Sideline is presented by First Bank and Trust Company. They offer free checking with industry-leading mobile banking. Who you choose to bank with can make all the difference. Visit firstbank.com to learn more. What's going on, Hokie Nation? It's officially week one of the 2023 college football season as the Hokies gear up to host Old Dominion in the season opener. Andy Bitter has all your insight from media availability this week, while Chris Coleman is our guy to preview the Monarchs. That's coming up on episode 307 of the Tech Sideline podcast, which starts right now. We record on Thursday, August 31st from the Tech Sideline High-Tech Studios in the Virginia Tech Corporate Research Center. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe to our channel, and please share the podcast with a friend. As always, Tech Sideline is presented by First Bank and Trust Company. Check out their new Checking with Perks account that comes with cell phone protection, roadside assistance, fuel savings, deals, and discounts, and so much more. Visit firstbank.com to learn about this great new account for students. This episode is also brought to you by the Hokie Way. The Hokie Way's Countdown to Kickoff Matching Donations campaign is ending on Saturday night with the kickoff of the football game. Since Monday, they have raised almost $100,000 to bring their total raised amount to almost $200,000. Their goal of $250,000 is certainly in reach. Help them get to the finish line. Visit thehokieway.org to learn more and to donate today. One last little bit here for you. Many of us here, the student interns, work for a organization called 3304 Sports, student media at Virginia Tech. And this year, 3304 Sports is attacking the 2023 football season with a brand new goal. Our mission is to cover all 12 Virginia Tech football games and an eventual bowl game to close out this season. But we need your help. Please consider donating to our GoFundMe page, where your contributions will go towards covering travel costs for our student journalists this football season. From hotels to transportation, every little bit helps. So head over to techsideline.com or check out the link in the description to donate to our student journalists today. All right, let's go ahead and introduce everybody on set. Of course, lead analyst and columnist Chris Coleman sitting to my right. Across the way, as always, senior staff writer Andy Bader. Making her fourth chair debut, Miss Morgan Gay. Producing behind the scenes, Jay Brizzy, as they call him, Jack Brizendine, and I'm your host, Giovanni Heater. Talking a lot of football, fellas. You know, it's my birthday today. There's no place I'd rather spend it than hanging out talking football with you guys.
That, Gio.
Nobody
believes that.
I swear. Tech Talk Live tonight too. Gonna be a good time.
Okay.
Gonna be a good time. But anyways, it's finally here. Feel like we've been waiting. We've been talking about football for months and months now, and now we finally get to crack this thing open on Saturday.
Yeah, the thing about football is it's unlike most other sports seasons. It's only 3 months long. Football. So like most of the time in football, you're just sitting around talking about the next season. That's life of a football fan. But for the next 3 months, we actually get to watch the sport.
Yeah.
It feels like football out. Like the weather, like normally it's like blazing hot this time of year, and it's like a little bit cooler. Like it just feels perfect for the football season. I know it's supposed to get warmer here a little bit, but I wish it would just stay right in the zone right now, because this is the perfect temperature and time of year, in my opinion.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Well, Andy, let's go ahead and kind of dive into what you have been up to all week long. You've been very busy with media availability. I kind of want to ask you this. Seems like they ramped up media availability and what you guys were able to see and your exposure the last week. Would you agree with that?
A little bit. I think, they had a couple availabilities last week. Not as much viewing of the practice. I think that they get to this stage of August and They kind of keep things under wraps. Don't want to have too much exposed to the media, as if we're going to divulge some huge secret that's going to come out. I don't know. When they put out the depth chart, I don't know what other secrets they're going to have in terms of personnel or anything like that. But no, it's just good anytime we can get out there to talk to people. I love more. Any more that they could give us, I would eat it up. It'd be great. So that's a message to Virginia Tech. Give us more. We'll take it. We'll definitely take it.
Something that really stood out to me is that you asked Coach Pry about his confidence in turning around the production out of the running game this season. Why is that such an important recipe for success in 2023?
I think that's sort of what they want the identity of this team to be. I mean, that's what Brent Pry described his offensive vision as when he got here. Sort of pound the ball, run, play action off of that. RPOs, different things you can do, but you have to be able to run the ball well first before you can do that other stuff. Everything else is kind of built off of that, or at least that's when the defense starts respecting it, and then other things open up in the offense. They didn't really have that last year. Strangely, the best game that they ran the ball last year was ODU in the opener. Didn't really run it as well as that the rest of the season. Even against Liberty, they ran it okay in that game, churned out some yards, but you looked at their yards per carry. It wasn't as good as it was in the ODU game. So I think if they can get that and get that offensive line turned around, I've said it many times, offensive line, how it performs this year will be the key to this offense in this season. If they can get that going and get that run game going with Tootin and Thomas and possibly Wells and Drones running in the quarterback run game, I think that's a key component to how this offensive turnaround is going to be this year.
What has changed in how much coach has devolved, but also just kind of his cadence throughout this media availability in comparison to last year when he's trying to hype up a fan base and get going for year number one? Just seems like this year's been a little bit different, not in a negative way at all, just a little bit different.
A little bit. He's still an excitable guy. I mean, somebody asked him about the first game being a sellout yesterday, and he turned into full cheerleader mode for the program there for a second.
Right.
I mean, he can flip that switch, and he's like, okay, it's salesman time. I got to sell this program, because that's what you have to do when you're a new coach and you're coming in and trying to get this thing built back up again. So I think just the constant message I've heard from Pry throughout this entire August is he feels that they've just upgraded the talent on the team. They've upgraded the talent, the competition. There's fewer holes in the lineup that they have to worry about, where last year it felt like they had to just play somebody because they had to. There were no other options. This year it feels like most spots there are other options. And that might not be the case in some places, like offensive line. All of a sudden tight end's a little bit thinner now if Nick Gallo is out for any serious amount of time. But there's fewer spots where you go, man, we just got to play this guy because he's the only one we have. And now they have other people that can go into the game.
How did this camp compare to not only last year's camp, but you've been around for quite a while now, to other camps in the past as well?
Camp is camp. It's not going to differ that much. I know people like to think from year to year, it's like, oh man, different attitude, different vibe. It's like, when it gets down to it, it's football practice. And most football practice is pretty much the same. It's grueling. There's points in August where you're like, I don't know if I can go out there and hit my own teammates again. You just want to go out and hit somebody else for once. There's always those ebbs and flows. There's always periods where, the coach is like, it didn't feel like the team had it today. And maybe they come back the next day. It's like, not seeing the crispness that we like to see. And we writers always like to joke. You can always hear that on success 2 days in a row, but never a third day. It's always the third day somehow it gets turned around. So there's sort of a maximum of 2 straight days you can be displeased with your practice performance until that seems to turn around. But I mean, it kind of follows the same cadences all the time, because practice kind of boils down to just being practice.
There was a point in, I want to say it was Coach's first press conference of the week, where he was asked about how his relationship with Ricky Ronnie and them now playing, year in and year out at this point, how they can't necessarily talk football. And I think that was actually one of the questions you asked him. And he happened to say that our fan base really enjoys this matchup and playing Old Dominion. And I kind of looked back at that and I was like, I don't know if they do. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I heard that and I immediately disagreed. I think, I've said this before. This is one of those games where sort of like a 4-hour stomach ache. Bud Foster used to call it that. Like, nobody enjoys this game because there's no upside in it for Virginia Tech. I mean, you win it, you're supposed to win it. You're beating up on a group of 5 team. You're supposed to be the flagship program of the state. You should do that. You lose it. all hell breaks loose.
Which we have twice.
Yeah, it's happened twice, and it's been a catastrophe both times. ODU still talks about that 2018 upset, and the last time, just for the comic relief of everything that happened in that game in terms of the coaches getting stuck in the elevator at halftime and the snap going past they should have had yakety sax in the background while that's going on. It's not funny necessarily, but the locker room gets burglarized. I mean, it's just everything seems to go wrong every time they've played down there in Norfolk. So I can't say, like I know a coach has to say that when they come in, oh, the fans love this matchup. I don't think the fans like this matchup at all. I think they would prefer not to have this on the schedule.
I'm with you. I was surprised when he said that as well. Nick Gallo listed as questionable. Just kind of the way it's being talked about. Do you buy that?
I don't know. Price said he was in and out of practice yesterday. He happened to not be out there when the media was there, so we didn't get to see knee brace or like I don't even know what the injury is necessarily. I know when they announced the captains, I think it was like a week and a half ago, and they, all the captains get up in front of the team when they announce them, and they announced Gallo, and he was kind of hidden behind other players, and Pry went over to him to shake his hand, and he didn't get up, and it's like, okay, that's maybe not a great sign. I don't really know. So I'll just trust what Pry says in terms of him being questionable. It doesn't sound like he'll be available this week, and if he's not, that group gets extremely young very quick. I mean, it's Daquan Wright, Benji Gosnell, Harrison St. Germain. They're all second-year players. Daquan Wright's really the only one who's played significant action. Not really that much as a tight end. I mean, he's mostly been a slot receiver. So if you're looking for the sort of the tight end on the line, hand on the ground, dirty work type of guy, they don't have somebody that's done that a lot in a game. And I would imagine that would be St. Germain and Gosnell in some capacity. And maybe Daquan Wright has expanded his game in the offseason to do that a little bit more. But, that's just a position that's very young right now. And I think, there'll be some growing pains to come along with that.
You don't want to speculate at all, and I don't want to put you in a tough position, so feel free to shoot my question down. But are we looking at a situation where you could see him miss extended time here, or you think this is like a couple week type of thing?
I don't really know. They're so guarded about injuries. I don't know. I don't know how much of a competitive advantage it is if the other team doesn't know if your senior tight end is going to play. Like, is the game going to hinge on the senior tight end and whether he plays or not? So I find it kind of comical sometimes the lengths that coaches go to hide or obscure injury information like that. But I just don't know at this point. We'll see. I mean, I would imagine one way or another, if Gallo's playing, he'll be out there. If he's not, I bet you he'll be on the sideline. So we'll maybe get a sense of A, what's ailing him, and B, how serious it might be.
Well, you guys talked to Ali Jennings as well. He's always incredibly enjoyable to hear from. We've had him on the set here before. What does he bring to the table in that media availability? I
thought, first of all the guys they brought, they can bring them every time this year. I thought they were all great talkers. I thought they gave great perspective on stuff. I think with Ali, it's interesting. He's playing his former team. That's got to be weird. You were teammates with them last year. I know ODU had a ton of turnover, like 58 new players on the team or something like that. But this is still a program you were with for a couple seasons. And, we asked Fontel Mines, who was also with ODU previously, like, what advice do you give to Ali? He's like, just relax. Like, it's football. Just go out there. Once you start playing, you'll forget about all that other stuff. Ali's got very high goals for himself this year. He's saying 60, 70 catches, 1,000 yards receiving, wants 10 receiving touchdowns. If he does that, that'll be among the best single seasons in Virginia Tech history. And he's come close to hitting those numbers in terms of, I think he did have a 1,000-yard season a couple years ago, was close last year, missed the last couple games, so he didn't quite get there. But he's a guy who's got proven production out there in the past. And you add him to Daquan Felton, Jalen Lane, Stephen Gosnell coming along in that receiver room. I think this is a really upgraded receiver room. I'm eager to see what they're like out there and what effect that has on a quarterback like Grant Wells, who all of a sudden is throwing to more than, one legitimate receiver that you have in the lineup.
Yeah, he sat in the chair that you're sitting in right now and told us he was going for the single season receiving records, right?
It's like, what is it, like 1184?
That's what I was just trying to pull
Isaiah
up.
Ford, I think.
Yeah.
Virginia Tech did not have a 1,000-yard receiver until Isaiah Ford did it in 2015. It was Beamer's last year. Even though Andre Davis got there with the bowl game, they didn't count bowl stats back then, so I don't know why they can't go back and retroactively update that. We have the stats. We've seen those games. They were on TV. So it's not like there's this long history of just huge receiving seasons, but that'd still be quite an accomplishment if he could get there, especially since I think it's a pretty crowded field this year, and I think the ball's going to be spread around to a bunch of different guys.
That's actually crazy. Just to pull this up here because it's relevant. Virginia Tech, like you just mentioned, didn't have one until 2015 with Isaiah Ford. He had 1,164 yards. Then he did it again, broke 1,000 the next year in 2016 with 1,094 yards. And the only people that have come close are Cam Phillips had 964 in 2017. And then you have to go all the way back. The next person to have 900 or more was Andre Davis in 99.
I think Marcus Davis came close in 2012.
Let's see, 2012. Marcus Davis had 953. You're right. My apologies. Other than that, nobody has touched 900. Those are the only three to ever get 900.
If Tech could have completed a forward pass in that Rutgers Russell Athletic Bowl, I think Marcus Davis could have gotten there.
Wow. Yeah, that's fair enough. That so what happened in that bowl game? You're going to have to fill me in.
Absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
It rained, and it was a sloppy game on both sides. It was the worst game.
It was 10-0 Rutgers at the end of the third quarter.
Okay.
And Tech somehow won.
Wow.
Yeah.
The second snap of the game, they snapped it past Logan Thomas into the end zone for, I think it was a safety?
Maybe.
Or maybe a touchdown for, I can't remember.
It was bad. Tech had 3 rushing yards.
Tech ran for 3 yards.
Yeah.
They averaged like 3 inches a carry or something like that, and they won. So that tells you how bad the game was.
Wow.
It was horrible.
It
was worse than the Wake Forest Virginia Tech game that was 0-0.
It was majestic in how bad it was. It was one of those type of games.
One of these days, I got to go back and watch that Wake Forest Virginia Tech game. That 0-0.
No, you don't.
How does that happen? How do you get to that point? Play 4 quarters of football without a score?
It happens, man. We're really hitting Virginia Tech's greatest hits here to start the season.
All right. Well, you also talked to Keli Lawson and Derrick Canteen as well. Those are the other 2 players that you had the opportunity to talk to. Any takeaways from those conversations?
Yeah, I think Canteen, I'm just impressed by his maturity. And, I'm writing about that today, just kind of what these older guys brought to the table coming in. We talked to Mansour Delane a week and a half ago, I think, and he talked about just how he saw how Canteen was with his film work and how he was with his diet and how he was with his preparation. And Mansour's still a young guy; he's a true sophomore. Has really only contributed in 5-6 games, whatever he played last year at the end of the season. But he's seen how this guy goes about his day professionally, and he started doing it himself. So I think you're going to see those benefits for a lot of the younger guys on the roster that saw how to be a professional type player and go about it like that. Keli Lawson, my takeaway from talking to him is, we're standing next to him afterwards because it's post practice and you're kind of around the table and you just look at him. He's just so tall, so tall and lean, and he's pretty jacked now too. I mean, he's added some weight. And I look at him and I just go, man, this guy's a physical specimen. And when he gets out there, it's going to be really interesting to watch him play linebacker because he's just so tall and lean and rangy. And you look at that play he had last year against Georgia Tech where he tipped it up in the air, he caught it, returned for a touchdown. Like, man, you're going to see a whole season of that as he's developing more as a linebacker. I think there's a reason Virginia Tech's pretty excited about him.
No doubt. And I remember Coach talking about the maturity of Canteen as well and how it's rubbed off. And not only just Canteen, but how it's rubbed off on Mansour Delane and some of the other underclassmen. So that was pretty cool because not always that a coach will open up about something like that. And I think Brent Pry, correct me if I'm wrong, is pretty good at tipping the cap as well when guys are doing good things.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the concern when you bring in so many new guys is how's that going to be received on the team? How's you're bringing in guys basically saying, well, we needed better players here, and you bring them into the room and go, this guy's going to start. Well, some people might just take that and be like, well, I'm not going to, the coach doesn't like me, I'm not going to do that. Or are you going to up your game and try to be as good as them? And I think the reaction so far on the guys that they've brought in has been pretty positive. And I don't think anybody's, I'm sure there's somebody on the team that's maybe, slouching a little bit. It's like, oh man, my playing time got stolen. But it feels like they have reacted positively to how these new guys have come in and ingrained themselves on the team and the culture of everything.
Fontel Mines was the second coach that you guys talked to. Again, anything from that conversation?
I think he's excited about the group he has. And we've talked about this before. I mean, Dawan Lofton is like the 8th receiver right now on the depth chart, and he was their second leading wideout last year. It just kind of shows you the hand he was dealt initially and what he had to deal with on roster wise on that team. I think he's just excited about the playmakers he has in that room. And, standing out of practice and seeing DeQuan Felton, I know he was on the podcast this week. He looks like a NFL type receiver, like just body wise. He looks big and just lean and looks like he can make plays on the outside. And I would not want to be a cornerback matched up against him. And, we've heard Derrick Jones, cornerbacks coach here, say that, they've had plays where they've had him perfectly covered and he just goes up and makes a play. And, Ollie Jennings, Jalen Lane, add him to the mix. Just a lot more guys, it feels like, in this passing attack that can make plays. And that was something that was sorely lacking last year.
We had DeQuan in here yesterday, and we asked him, what is it about Fontel Mines? What makes him tick as far as he seems to be this elite recruiter? What is it that he's able to do to draw guys like that in here? And he kind of just gave us a short answer and said, like, that's my guy, and didn't really go super in depth with that. So I'm curious your thoughts from an outside perspective. What is it about Fontel Mines that makes him such a great recruiter?
I think he's pretty easygoing. He's easy to talk to. He seems like he's always at PKs. Every time I've been at PKs, he's always over there to a bunch of players and stuff. So they like hanging out with him. He seems like a guy that's just easy to hang out with. I think he's very, true about, a lot of guys always say, I love to be at, this is home. Virginia is home. I mean, Fontel Mines lives it. Like, he's from Richmond. He played at Virginia. He coached. I think he's coached at like every school in the state. I think if he coaches at Liberty, he gets a set of steak knives for completing the cycle of coaching at every school in the state. I mean, he's here and he talks about that and he really lives that. So I think, guys see that he is very true to his word and speaks, means what he says when he speaks. I think that genuineness comes through on the recruiting trail. And I think a lot of people are, that's a positive for them.
Let me chime in on that. I wrote a big feature on him a couple of weeks ago. I sat in his office and talked to him for about 20 or 30 minutes. I talked to Jim Cavanaugh, former Tech assistant, who actually recruited Mines during the recruiting process. I talked to Lou Johnson, a coach out in the Tidewater, who has been dealing with Mines for 15 years now. And the word they all use to describe him is genuine. And it's interesting because when I went into his office and asked him, what do you have to do to be a good recruiter? He said, I think you have to be genuine. And then I thought it was funny that a lot of those guys use the same language, the same words when talking about him, and without. I mean, I did those interviews separately. Like, we weren't all in the same room together. I did them separately at separate times, and they all used a lot of the same language. So I just think he's a genuine guy, and I think that's the most accurate word you can use to describe him. And I think he's young enough to relate to players and things like that. He's got a commanding presence about him. I think he's tough on you without being harsh. It just seems like there's a reason Penn State went after him. Like, you can't, if when you're a wide receivers coach, like, it's not one of those positions where you can hire a really good recruiter, and if he's maybe not a great coach, that's okay. You can hide him. It's not like a tight ends coach or something like that. He has to be a good coach and a good recruiter, and I think it speaks a lot that Penn State heavily pursued him in the offseason.
Yeah, you don't want somebody that's sort of like shy to be a receivers coach.
No.
Like, that's a brash position.
Yeah.
You need to get guys that are sort of in the mold of their coach, and I think that, Virginia Tech has some of those guys now.
Andy, anything else from you on this past week?
Nothing, except I'm just ready for some games. I feel like I sense that around the team too. It's like, it's time to get to these games at this point, because it's been a long offseason. It feels like we've been talking about this forever. Go kick it off, strap them up. Let's see how the game goes.
I'm in midseason form.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, I got the tailgate last week. I went to the Notre Dame game last week.
True.
I've got my fix already.
How was that, by the way?
You didn't ease your
Awesome.
way into the tailgate based on the pictures.
No, there was no easing in. No,
How was that, by the way?
Oh, it was awesome.
Yeah.
It was awesome. Great stadium, great fan base. I mean, there was obviously Notre Dame fans there all week, and every interaction I've always had with Notre Dame fans wherever has been great. And so, yeah, great time. Loved Ireland. I would do it all over again.
If you had to put an estimate on your blood alcohol level when the game started,
Oh, which day?
average for the trip.
I don't even want to know.
Carter goes to me yesterday. He goes, I was talking to Chris yesterday, and I was talking in the office, and he says, man, did you really enjoy yourself with some adult beverages at that game? And Chris goes, What makes you say that? And Carter goes, well, you tweeted about it all day.
It was, well, when in Ireland.
Yeah.
They like to do that a lot over there.
Yeah, it's probably not out of character for the Irish. Based on I went to Ireland once, and there's a lot of Jameson. There's a lot of Smithwick's, Guinness.
I have Irish on both sides of my family. So
there you go.
When I have intemperate moments, I blame it on my forefathers.
There was where I grew up in Syracuse. There's a like iconic bar that was like right down the street from my house. It's like the spot to go, and it's called Coleman's.
Yeah.
And it's an Irish pub.
Gosh, I need to take a trip.
And they do something called Green Beer Sunday. They bring in a giant thing, and you drink green beer on St. Patrick's Day. No, it's St. Patrick's Day. Yeah.
Okay.
Once a year, it's like a big deal in Syracuse.
Yeah.
But by the way, Notre Dame looked, I hate to say it, pretty good.
They did look good.
They looked very good with Sam Hartman running the show. All right, let's go ahead and head over to our fourth chair. Introduce one of our new interns for this year, Morgan Gay. Morgan is going to be running Tech Sideline's TikTok account. Check out @TechSideline on TikTok, where she'll be posting content very, very soon, especially throughout the weekend. Morgan, welcome.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. But I'm super excited to be running a TikTok, talking to Will about it, and trying to change like the age difference of like who listens to the podcast, trying to get a new audience in to like see our TikTok and then get them to listen to the podcast. I think it's going to go really well.
Pretty cool. And you guys both went to the same high school.
I'm very happy to report that 50% of the on-camera talent today attended Chatham High School.
That is very cool. In Danville, Virginia?
Chatham, yeah, close enough. Pennsylvania County, yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, tell us more about what you got planned for this TikTok. I know that, like you said, we're trying to reach a new audience with the TikTok, but like you have so many ideas. You keep throwing them in all the group chats that we got going. So break it down for us a little bit.
Yeah, so I really want to start off whenever all of our schedules are very hectic to get all the interns in and get everybody to just like know who works here, like the people who aren't on camera, the people behind the scenes, the people who are on the camera, the interns who are just started like myself. I've just been like going through TikTok and like listening to sounds, or like if I see something and it doesn't even like necessarily have to do like with work or sports, like how can I incorporate that into our TSL days.
Very cool. Morgan, you're going to be spending a lot of time answering or bringing up some questions on today's show. I know you have some from Twitter, but first you have one about Cassell Coliseum. So what you got for us?
Yeah, so it's a reoccurring question that what is happening with the Cassell Coliseum renovations?
Well, in case nobody noticed, ever since COVID, there's been quite a spike in interest rates and lots of inflation and things like that. So the cost of that project compared to the first estimates has gone up a lot. And I think that's part of it. Second, ever since the announcement of that project, you've had NIL. And you're asking those donors now, look, NIL is more important than Cassell Coliseum renovations, because you have, if you want to get the best players these days, like, you have to pay them. Okay, that's just the way it is. So that's more important than whether fans have, a seat that's two inches wider, right, and a few more amenities and things like that. So I think not only is it the cost of it, I just think you're asking the same people now to donate even more. And there's only so many times you can go to that well and say, okay, we want Hokie Club donations. Okay, we want NIL. Okay, we're trying to renovate Cassell Coliseum. Like, I think the Tech fan base is outstanding. And they do have pretty deep pockets, but there is a limit.
Yeah, and I think a key is getting a big fish donation, like an 8-figure donation that would sort of jumpstart this whole thing. Once you get that sort of gets the wheels in motion. Okay, now you can start doing some actual mock-ups and get some actual estimates of what it's going to be. So if they can get one or two of those, and that's asking a lot, because those don't come along every day, that size of a donation. But I think that would help a lot, because you just got to get the ball moving on this thing. And I think if other people see that, here's a big thing to start this, and then all of a sudden they have mock-ups and there's pictures that the stuff they put up before, I don't think is exactly what it would look like. And, if cost estimates change, there's a varying sort of degree of what this whole thing will look like. But once that gets going, I think that'll get that big donation first, and things will kind of get moving.
And I also think another thing is it's such an extensive renovation that they would have to, as originally planned, that they would have to play in Roanoke for a year, maybe even 2. I've heard, and I think that would be bad for the program if they lost their home court advantage for at least 1 season and have to play in Roanoke. Can you imagine going to Roanoke every night for a game?
A lot of people
the students wouldn't, and that's what makes Cassell Coliseum. That's what gives it a home court advantage. So I don't want to renovate it like they originally called for. I would like dress it up, clean the roof, I would say, because it's pretty dirty. Maybe a completely new roof. Maybe widen the concourses on the sides a little bit if you can do that, just to get a little more breathing room when you're walking through. But I think with, interest rates and everything going up, I think they were looking for a specific amount of donations for the project to start. But now if the rest of it you're financing, and what you're financing, the interest rate has gone up on that, then you might be looking for even more of an initial donation now to make up for that. So I just don't think the renovation as originally projected, as you saw on those graphics released by Virginia Tech, I don't think it's going to happen exactly like that.
Just get some reclining media seats, widescreen TVs, some press row, get the essentials for this.
Yeah, exactly.
Almost slightly off topic, but you brought up media stuff, and I meant to bring it up earlier. Let's take some bets. What's the media meal going to be for the football game? That's your guess?
That's I remember 90% of the meals that they serve there, so I'm going to go with barbecue.
Well, last year I was like, and this wasn't a knock at all, but we were just kind of surprised, usually season opener they always go all out, right? And it was Brent Pry's first home game, and it was hot dogs and potato chips, and we were I was kind of surprised by that.
I would take hot dogs and potato chips
delicious.
over what some of the stuff they serve. Don't get too fancy, we're media members.
Now that we're so staffed up now, I don't go to the games as media anymore, and I'm talking basketball here.
Right.
But I remember they used to serve us pretty good pregame meals. It would be in the Bowman, what used to be the Bowman room, and we'd be eating there in the same room with the big donors and things like that. That room is now the Student Athlete Performance Center. And
you're not getting close to that place now.
Those good meals have gone, and now you get stuff in a box, and it's unpredictable from game to game. And
somebody think of the poor media.
I'm very content to send David Cunningham there and let him eat that mediocre food.
Well, as a student, I'm just beyond grateful to even be there in the first place, so I don't care what they feed us. But I do remember, another side note, Pittsburgh was unbelievable. Andy, you were probably there. They had probably the best media ever. Pittsburgh's great for media meal because it's in that NFL stadium. They have a carving station sometimes. Boston College is the best, though. Really? Okay.
Because they have unlimited legal seafood clam chowder in the press box. So you just load up on that. I mean, it's 3 or 4 bowls every time you go there, in addition to other great food, too. So
how things change. When I was a student, I covered a Tech Pitt game, and this is 2003. And we get up there, and we eat a little bit of breakfast in the morning, and we decide, we're not going to eat lunch. We'll just eat the media meal tonight when we get to the stadium. So we get to the stadium, we set all our cameras down, and we go in search of the media room where there's food, and can't find it. And finally we asked somebody who works there, and he goes, "Oh, well, we only feed the media for NFL games, for Steelers games." So they did not feed us, and we finally got out of that stadium. It's a night game. After interviews and everything, walked back across the bridge. It's 1 a.m. and we basically hadn't eaten since probably 7 a.m. and that was just a donut or something like that.
Oh, no.
So my experience at Pittsburgh as far as food goes was absolutely horrible because I almost starved. Nice to see that it's improved, though.
Another thing about BC, and I don't know if they still do it, but after the game, they will roll out some beers in the press box. Talk about old school. It's like this feels like you're a newspaper writer in the 80s or something like that. So hopefully they continue doing that.
That's hilarious. Are you going up to BC? I think a lot of us are going to miss the trip because we're going to go to Charlotte for hoops.
I will be in BC, yes.
You'll be at BC. Got you. Where are you going to go to Charlotte?
I'm going to stay here.
Oh, really? Missing Hokie weekend in Charlotte. Morgan's got another question for us. This time it's from Twitter.
I do. From Chris Booth, do you guys think that the Hokies can break 30 points this weekend?
I think they should. I definitely think they should. I think Old Dominion lost some star power on defense. That they lost a defensive tackle to Penn State. They lost a cornerback to the New York Giants, who looks like he's even going to be starting for them this year. They lost their other starting corner to oh gosh, a big school in the transfer portal. I forget which school, but it's a big Power 5 school where he's going to. So they had good defensive players last year, and they've still got Jason Henderson, the linebacker. But on the whole, I don't think their defense is as talented as it was last year, and I think the Hokies have improved their talent level. The fact of the matter is, 5 of their 12 opponents last year topped 30 points, and that was with a defense that I think is more talented than this year's version. So I'll be disappointed if Virginia Tech doesn't score 30 points on Saturday.
Little trivia question. Do you know the highest point total that Virginia Tech had last year?
Pittsburgh, 29.
29. I didn't realize until looking it up right now. I didn't realize it.
And that's the thing. Like, if you tell me before the season, Tech's not going to score 30 points this year, they're going to get 29 one game, who's it going to be? I'd be like, well, Furman, sure, right?
Right.
Not certainly that Pittsburgh would be like my last pick.
It's very strange. I mean, I didn't factor that in when I was picking. I picked them to win 31-17. I don't know if we were doing picks at the end to spoil that, but that did not factor in when I picked them to score 31 points. But I think the offense is drastically upgraded, just in terms of talent. I would assume direction. We'll see. We'll see if that thing's sorted out. I know there's still some offensive line issues, but I think just the number of sheer playmakers they brought into this program, I think that's going to help them quite a bit. And I do think they get to that 30-point barrier.
Wanted to answer your question for you as well. Robert Kennedy, a loss on the defensive side. He went to NC State, and then the defensive tackle Alonzo Ford went to Penn State. Mm-hmm. Morgan, we're going to come back to you for some more Twitter in just a little bit, but now it's time to bring it over to Chris. Let's preview the Old Dominion Monarchs, first starting on the offensive side of the ball, and this is where stuff gets a little bit fun. You got a lot of numbers banged out here. I mean, you're talking everything is in the hundreds as far as their offensive national rankings, except their passing offense was 51st in the country. Well, they lost their best wide receiver, their quarterback's gone, and it's a completely different look.
They're so hard to get a read on because I think they lost their most talented players. One of them plays for Virginia Tech now. 2 of them got drafted, a tight end and an offensive tackle.
Which is crazy, by the way, and I don't mean to interrupt you, that they struggled so much, won 3 games last year, and they had multiple solid draft picks.
Correct, and they had a good
more than Virginia Tech.
They had a good running back too, who transferred to Memphis. They had solid offensive talent last year, but they were horrible offensively. And listen, and they didn't seem that talented when you watch them play, but coaching can make talent look worse than it actually is. And I think that was the case with Old Dominion last year. And I don't think they have that talent this year, but they have an offensive coordinator who, albeit at a lower level, Kevin Decker at Fordham. What were they, second all-time in total offense last year?
Second best FCS offense ever.
609 yards per game.
Fordham, the cradle of offensive coordinators.
Yeah, absolutely. The battle of those. Fordham fans are going to be tuned in with keen interest in this game. Tyler Bowen and Kevin Decker, both Fordham offensive coordinators. Very balanced, but they do favor the pass, at Fordham at least. We'll see. I mean, he brought in his own quarterback, Grant Wilson, from Fordham, but Wilson was the backup at Fordham. So you've got a quarterback who was the backup at an FCS school who has 13 career passing attempts and threw just 5 passing attempts last year. He knows the offense, but I don't think he's got that much talent around him. I don't think there's an Ollie Jennings to throw to, or Zach Kuntz at tight end to throw to. And I don't think there's a Blake Watson at running back. So there might be knowledge in the offense, but I don't think there's as much talent as there was last year. Although sometimes it's hard to say because, like I said, I think they didn't seem to be particularly well coached offensively last year. So maybe there's more talent than there appears to be on this roster.
It will be interesting to see if just sort of the system is the star this year for ODU. And the first game, you can't tell. I guess in the spring game, they put up a lot of points, but who knows? Spring games are strange in that regard. But yeah, just this offensive coordinator they have has a history of looking pretty good, and his offense, I think it's similar to UCF or similar to the up tempo, and they'll try to pace you by going fast at times and get the ball out quick to different playmakers and like that. It sounds like it could be a challenge. I just don't know if they have the personnel right now. But last year I think the offensive coordinator for ODU resigned a week before or 2 weeks before the season opener,
They
something
were
like
a
that.
mess.
That's not a great way to go into the season. That's obviously not a great thing for Virginia Tech to lose to that team starting off. But they had some offensive issues last year. It'll be curious. I'm curious to see if you're bringing this guy in that has solved sort of the direction of the offense and where they want to go.
Chris Decker brought his offensive line coach with him from Fordham as well. They came as a tandem with the quarterback. The offensive line for the Monarchs, like Virginia Tech, very inexperienced.
It's inexperienced, particularly on the left side. Their two most experienced players are at center and right guard, but those guys did not play well last year. They played, particularly in the case of Xavier Black, the center. He was one of PFF grading standpoint here, was one of the worst centers in the country last year, especially from a pass blocking perspective. So I like Tech's chances of controlling their offensive line. Virginia Tech's going to have good defensive tackle play. We like to think that they've improved their playmaking ability at defensive end. I guess we'll start finding out. Even though they lose Dax Holyfield, I think overall collectively as a group, there's more experience at linebacker just because you're not trotting out redshirt freshmen like you were last year. So I feel good about that matchup, about Virginia Tech controlling their offensive front. I do think it helps that their offensive line coach and their offensive coordinator have worked together in the past. And I think that was, an issue for Virginia Tech last year, is like that you didn't necessarily, I'm not going to see eye to eye. I don't know. I just don't think it was the right mix. I think Tech will be better there this year as a result. But I do think it's important that offensive coordinators and offensive line coaches be on the same page. I thought, during the course of the Cornelson, Vance, Weiss 6-year era in Blacksburg, I thought Cornelson's scheme did a good job of protecting offensive linemen. Especially that year where Tech started three freshmen right next to each other, and somehow they were actually able to put a competent product on the field when you probably shouldn't in that situation. So I think that offensive coordinator, offensive line coach relationship is very important. So that could give them a little bit, they could hit the ground running a little more, so to speak. But it's just so many new faces, coaching staff and personnel, that you don't know how it's going to go. My gut feel is that Wilson has probably played pretty well for them because they have named him a team captain. And I don't think you name someone who's been playing bad football a captain, even if he is a good leader. I mean, that guy has to be one of your better players. So I think if they have issues in this game, and I do think Tech's defense is going to cause them a lot of issues, then I think it's going to be more because of the talent level around their quarterback.
So the talent level you talk about, and I'd have to agree that Virginia Tech can certainly give them fits, especially when you have an inexperienced quarterback playing in front of a sold-out, 66,000-seat stadium. That's definitely not an easy thing to do. Something that really stood out that you had written in your article as well, they seem incredibly undersized offensively. Receivers not touching over 6 feet. I mean, look at their second running back, Obi Sinai, 5'9", redshirt sophomore. The first running back in Keyshawn Wicks doesn't have terrible size, 6'1", 194, but 5'9" is pretty small. And again, I go back to the receiver room.
Yeah, 5'11", 5'8", 5'10". There's the heights of their starting three receivers. That they've only, and they're too deep. They only have one receiver who's over 5'11", so they don't have like a traditional outside receiver on this team, which might not matter for their style of offense. We'll just have to wait and see on that. 4 of their 5 starting offensive linemen under 300 pounds. Running backs not terribly big, as you said, and both running backs with limited experience as well, and both average fewer than 4 yards per carry for their careers. So you just look up and down on their offense, their players historically, there's just not much production there. Javon Harvey's been their most productive receiver. He caught 30 passes last year, but in fact, their second leading receiver last year was the running back, Blake Watson, who transferred. So they just lost so much production off the offense, and they were so bad offensively last year that I do think they're going to be better this year, but I don't think they're going to be better in week 1.
Let's flip it over to the defensive side of the football. Kind of no secret that last year ODU struggled The defense was better than the offense. Hard to call it a strength, though. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think their defense was at best mediocre, probably slightly below average on the whole. If you look at them from a statistical standpoint, they did lose some good players. Obviously, they lost a starting cornerback to the New York Giants. They lost a starting cornerback to NC State. They lost a starting defensive tackle to Penn State. So that lets you know. I mean, there was talent on that ODU team last year. It wasn't like layered depth across the board, but they had some good individual players that, unfortunately for them, they could not keep. With their talent level now, it's kind of hard to say. Denzel Lowry has been a good defensive tackle for him. Jalil Taylor has played a little bit. He was a transfer from North Carolina. He's got a little bit of experience, not a ton. Jason Henderson's a really good linebacker, one of the best run-stopping linebackers in the country, but does really struggle in the passing game. Can give up big plays in the passing game, so it'll be up to Tech to be able to isolate him in one-on-one situations. Call it the Dax Holyfield game plan, right? It's not that Dax gave up a bunch of plays last year. It's just the few that he did give up, they were big passing plays when opponents were able to isolate him, and that's what you need your coordinator to be able to do. That's what Tyler Bowen has to do in this situation. It's going to be interesting to see how they replace those two cornerbacks who were so good last year. Lamarian James has played well in limited snaps last year. Nolan Johnson is 1,200 snaps in his career at Miami of Ohio and at East Carolina, but he's on his third school, which he's never been able to lock down a starting job. He's never played more than 300 snaps in a season. So even though he's got experience, it's, kind of mediocre experience. So how these guys, I would have to say that I think their cornerbacks are not as good as their cornerbacks from last year. And Virginia Tech's receivers are quite a bit better than Virginia Tech's receivers from last year. So on paper, it should go much better for Virginia Tech on that side of the ball this time around.
Do you think since Virginia Tech, like we talked about, maybe the offensive line, you don't want to call it a weak spot on the team, but one of the more inexperienced spots, going up against a guy like Amari Morrison, who, was banged up a lot last year, did have a good game against Virginia Tech, Conference USA all-freshman team 2 years ago. Could this be a guy that gets after the quarterback a little bit and kind of makes Grant run around here?
He's probably a guy you look at that, like you said, had a good season as a freshman 2 years ago, played the first 3 games last year, got hurt, took a medical red shirt. So he's kind of probably a guy people have forgotten about a little bit. And but I think he was poised. He should be poised, to probably be their second best defensive lineman, maybe even their best defensive lineman, and probably their best defensive end this year. So yeah, he would be a guy to keep an eye on for sure. I think I don't know too much about like the other defensive ends, but it's not a big group of defensive tackles. I mean, your 2 starters are 280 and 285. Generally teams at ODU's level aren't quite as big as Power 5 teams anyway, so that's not totally unexpected.
Anything worth noting on the special team side of things? Seems pretty routine there.
Lamarian James, 2 years ago, returned 2 kickoffs for touchdowns. So he's one to watch. And also you've got, I believe it's Isaiah Page, who's been a punt returner for them, and he was good 2 years ago. Also, their punt returning and kickoff returns were not as good last year as they were in 2021, but both of those guys showed they were capable 2 years ago. So that's something you got to be aware of. Like, I'm not like fearful of it, but it's something to be aware of.
Chris, your final thoughts previewing the Old Dominion Monarchs?
I think with so many new faces, like you would think with Ricky Ronnie and Brent Pry coming from Penn State, so many staff members, like Fontel Mines even coming from Old Dominion, so many guys on each staff familiar with each other.
Justin Harper
played at Virginia Tech. He's now the tight ends. He replaced Mines at Old Dominion. There's a lot of familiarity there, but at the same time, when you go out like Ricky Ronnie did and hire an offensive coordinator outside of your coaching tree, so to speak, and then that throws some fog of war into the mix, and especially when you bring in a transfer quarterback and you've got, I want to say, I forget the exact numbers that I wrote in the game preview. Maybe you can see it, but I want to say that their roster turnover ranked something like 6th in the country or something like that. Like, they only have like 41 returning players.
I thought it might have been even higher.
It might be right.
What was their record last year?
3-8, or
3-8, 3-9. So
Yeah.
maybe not a bad thing.
Maybe not a bad thing, exactly. So, and then, Virginia Tech had a high turnover rate with their roster as well. So it makes it kind of, it casts such a fog of war over it with all the personnel, and Tech head coaching changes too. All right. And I like to think, the optimist in me likes to think that, I didn't think Tyler Bowen had a good year last year, but maybe he wasn't a great mix with those two assistants who left, and maybe it's a better fit now with the staff. That's what I like to hope. Now, if Virginia Tech does not play well offensively, then I think my hopes will be dashed there a little bit. But I do feel good about this game. Virginia Tech out-talents Old Dominion. And if you look at everything that had to happen for Old Dominion to win the game last year, snap over the holder's head for a touchdown, and that's possible, a 10-point swing. 4 interceptions, a couple of which just deflected off receivers' hands. A Hail Mary at the end of the game to win. They had to convert a 4th and 2. Like
4th and 2 where the running back was hit in the backfield.
Right.
Like 4 yards in the backfield.
Yeah.
And it looked like 2 guys had him dead to rights,
Right.
and he somehow snuck out of there and got the first down. I mean, they were that close.
All of that had to happen for Old Dominion to win by 3 points.
Coach is getting stuck in the elevator.
Coach is getting stuck in the elevator. And
I hope the elevator inspector is checking that out this time.
15 penalties?
Maybe we can get Cherie Berry out of retirement in North Carolina to make sure that elevators are in working order here. That's a joke for ACC media and ACC media only.
So, like, all that.
David Teal loved that.
Yeah.
I'm sure they did. So, like, all of that plus 15 penalties, wasn't it?
15 for like 106 yards or something like that.
All of that, and ODU could only win by 3 at home. This year, Tech, I think, has upgraded their talent level, hopefully upgraded their coaching. ODU's talent level, I don't think, has been upgraded. Maybe their coaching has. I don't know. But the game's in Blacksburg. Virginia Tech should win this game. And if they don't, and it shouldn't even be, I'm not saying they should go out and win by 30 or 40 or something like that. But by the end of the game, I feel like you should be able to have a very clear feeling that Virginia Tech is a better football team than Old Dominion, and I'll be disappointed if that's not the result.
Yeah, if they're going to back up all the optimistic talk of the offseason. I mean, you win, and it's like, okay, that's maybe proof of concept that the things go in the right direction. If you lose, man, all that talk was for nothing, it felt like. I don't want to say it's the end of the season. You got 11 games left after this, but it's like, you got to do something more than talk. You got to back it up a little bit. So this is an opportunity, and this is, you look at the schedule, this is the only team on the schedule that you can say for sure that they out-talent. I would say everything else, even Marshall, it's not going to be quite to that level.
Great defensive Marshall.
Virginia, I think they're better than Virginia, but Virginia's got pretty good defense too. So, for where Virginia Tech is right now, this is a team that you should go out and you should beat.
The confidence level of the fan base, too, I think it's as strong as it possibly can be coming off a 3-8 season. But that's still like fragile confidence, right? You go out and lose to ODU again, and or even if you like win and play bad, then I think fans are really like, okay, we recruited well. Pry's so good with talking and reaching out to the fan base, but we're just not seeing the results, and there's no evidence that we are, right? So I think it's important to come out and have a good performance just from a confidence boost standpoint. And I think it's because I do think the fan base is very confident considering they're coming off a 3-8 season, but I think that confidence can be broken just like that.
Kudos to Chris for this. I just wanted to make sure I answered a question you had asked earlier in the show. And this is in Chris's article. So again, he found these stats. Old Dominion's 58 newcomers are the 7th most of any FBS team in the country, and 41 scholarship newcomers is also the 7th most in the country. The Monarchs are tied with New Mexico with 6 seniors, which is the fewest in the country, and of the 41 players it returned, ODU has 150 total combined starts, the 6th fewest in the nation.
What an age of college football that they have 58 newcomers, and that's 7th. I mean,
right.
6 teams have more turnover.
Right.
Like I'm sure Colorado's probably like 100 or whatever that turnover is there. Yeah. But like 58, I mean, that's a lot. That is a lot of turnover, and it's 7th.
Yeah.
You better be able to run a simplified offense as a coach these days if you're going to have this much turnover.
No doubt. All right, we go to Morgan for some more Twitter questions to wrap us up for today.
From Jonah Middleton, he wants to know what the most important one-on-one matchup is going to be for this game.
Andy?
I don't know if it's one-on-one because I have a tough time naming individuals on the ODU defense. I think I look at Virginia Tech's offensive line and I go, they've got to hold up because that's where it starts with this offense. You got to have time to get the ball to those playmakers. You got to have holes for the running backs to run through. You got to give your quarterback time in the pocket. And who's the defensive lineman you mentioned earlier? Morrison.
Yeah.
Wherever he's lined up, I think that matchup's going to be key because he sounds like somebody who could, disrupt and get through there. And I have questions about that offensive line. I'd like to see them play together with some cohesion. Keep the quarterback's jersey clean, get the holes wide for those running backs to get through. I mean, that would help a lot. There weren't a lot of holes last year for guys to run through. So that would be my biggest matchup to watch.
I think ODU is going to throw it a lot. If you look at Kevin Decker's history. Now, they had a balanced offense at Fordham. They had a 1,200-yard rusher almost last year, but at the same time, they threw it so much that it was heavily favored towards the pass. So they're going to come out and sling it around, I think. So you want your DBs to be able to hold up against these wide receivers, and if that happens, then I don't really see ODU being good enough to establish a running game against Virginia Tech. So to me, they're really going to struggle to score unless they can have consistency in the passing game. So to me, Mansour Delane, Dorian Strong, Derrick Canteen, Jalen Stroman, that to me, those are the guys that are going to decide whether or not ODU is able to move the football against Virginia Tech.
Morgan, got more for us?
I do. I lost my tab. What is the most anticipated aspect of this game?
Aspect, I think for me, oh gosh, I'm a big eye test guy, and I want to see Virginia Tech just look more creative offensively. I dug up some. I've already written most of my Q&A for this week, which will get posted on Friday. But I dug up some Pry quotes last night, where he was like, "We can't be so vanilla on offense, and we're too easy to draw a bead on." Offensively, and he made these comments in the middle of last season when they were really starting to struggle, and he's right. I mean, if you go back and watch it, there's very little misdirection, very little deception. The one quarter they did that stuff, they had 200 yards of offense against NC State, and I'm not asking for 200 yards of quarter because that's unrealistic, but to me, I just want to see a more functional offense and one that, to me, looks like it can be a successful offense just in terms of passing the eye test. And my other answer would be probably Enter Sandman.
I am eager to see this quarterback situation and how are they going to handle that. Mm-hmm. And they've said Wells is the starter, Drones is going to play. It's like, okay, but what's the plan?
Right.
And how is that going to play out? And if Wells goes out and struggles early, do you put Drones in right away? Say Wells comes out on fire, but you had a plan to put Drones in on the third series. Do you alter that? Do you continue with your plan and kind of cool off your own guy like that? Even if it doesn't actually cool him off, do you give the perception that you're cooling him off by taking him out of the game at that point? So, I've said a lot of times this is a tricky thing to do, to rotate quarterbacks and somehow get that second quarterback in the game without disrupting the rhythm or affecting your starter in any way. And I want to see how the coaching staff handles that.
That's a great point. I remember the offensive coaching staff, I think, did a great job managing the Tyrod Taylor, Sean Glennon rotation back in 2007. I thought in 2003 when they tried to rotate Marcus Vick and Brian Randall, which I don't think there was any reason for. Randall was clearly the superior quarterback. They did not handle that well. They lost to Boston College. They come out and they put up 250 yards in the first quarter and are just dominating the BC defense. And they take Randall out and put in Vic, and the offense stalls. And the same thing happened at Pitt that year. They got off to a really good start offensively, and let's put in Marcus now because it's his turn. And the offense stalled, and they could never really get it back. And I think the quarterback rotation cost them 2 football games that year, and a chance at the Big East title. So that's something that has to be very carefully managed, I think. So I agree with you. How are they going to manage it? Is it going to be? Are they just going to use drones maybe in short yardage, goal line, every now and then a change of pace, like a Connor Blumrick type when they tried to, in 2021 when they would kind of bring him in randomly.
Seldom used.
Seldom, exactly. And only allowed to run the football, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
And that Tyrod thing is interesting because I think it was so obvious what the plan was there because they're like, okay, between the 20s, it's going to be Glennon. Then once you get inside the red zone there, okay, Tyrod comes in. He was extremely effective. I think I remember him running around in the UVA game.
Absolutely.
And then, getting at the end zone a couple times, I think, in that game. I don't know if the skill differences are that drastic between these two. I think Drones moves pretty well. And I think I think Wells moves pretty well.
Correct.
I think Drones throws it pretty well. I don't think there's this just stark difference between the two in either of their, what you would consider their lesser attributes right now. So I just, the offense was such a struggle last year. Now they're like, okay, now we're also going to do the most difficult thing in football and manage a quarterback rotation in some sense. I know they're not going to call it a rotation, but if you have plans to play two, you are technically rotating them. So we'll see how that goes.
And this is like all a part of being a football fan and somebody trying to cover football before a season starts. It's like you see reasons for optimism, but everything we just talked about in this little segment, I could see it being a complete disaster also.
Quite possible. Yeah. That's why football's fun. Let's play the games.
That's right.
Morgan's got one more for us.
If Tech wins but doesn't cover, is there any concern?
It depends. Like
Spread 16,
Is
by the way.
Is this question from Aaron McFarlane?
It
I think it
sounds like
might
it should be. Yeah. I think it depends. Like if Tech is up by like 21 or something like that, and ODU hits like a last-second touchdown against the backup defense, a backdoor cover, as Aaron would call it, I don't think it's that big a deal. But if like this is a dogfight in the fourth quarter, then I think it's a big deal.
It's the season opener. Weird things happen in season openers. I think you just win and be happy with winning. And if it's not a cover, who cares? If they win by 3, it's a win. It's better than they started last year.
It's true.
It's something they only did 3 times last year. It's a long season. You're breaking in new guys. I know ODU doesn't jump off the page as an opponent, but it's a team that beat you last year. You didn't win a whole lot of games last year. Just to show some forward momentum, I think just winning would be a key thing. And I don't really care what the margin is. I think just win, baby. That's what I say.
See, I guess I think to assert, some sort of confidence here, I think you got to win by 2 touchdowns or more, which I guess is 14, not 16, but somewhere in that ballpark. I think if you don't win by at least 10, it's a disappointment.
You see crazy things happen. Like there's certainly many times in Virginia Tech's past where they did not start off the season well, and then they went on to have a great season. Actually, some of the most memorable seasons in Tech history
2010,
have been like that. But like at the same time, from a confidence standpoint, not just for the fan base, players always say they're confident. They always say that in front of a camera, but like when you go 3-8 and then you come out and if you struggle to put away ODU in the first game, and then you look at the rest of the schedule and you're like, well, that's the worst team we played all year. Like, how can you maintain that confidence? So I think from a psyche standpoint, I don't want this to be a close game. I'll be disappointed if it is, I think, but at the same time, I want to see how it looks before I really go all in on something like that.
Yeah, I think, how many times have you seen a week 1 result be completely foreign to what the rest of the season is? I think you see that so often where it's just like it just didn't come out right. Like they were just not quite ready for it, or the bright lights were too big for them, or just an off night. It just didn't mesh or whatever.
Or the other way around. 2018 Hokies look great against Florida State.
Right,
They're gonna have a great year.
Exactly. It's just how often is it fool's gold in that first game? It's like, oh my gosh, this Bud Foster defense is completely shutting down what turned out to be a complete train wreck of a Florida State offense. You just don't know. So this is why, after week 1, we always declare Texas is back, Notre Dame is back. It's like you don't know. You don't know until you get into the season. So I would caution not to overreact. And I think reacting to based on how much you win the game by, if it's not enough, like you went 3-8 last year, just be satisfied with winning.
It's true. Everyone's gonna give me a hard time in the comments, but Syracuse started 6-0 last year. We're top 14 in the country, and then they lost every game but 1 after that. So it happens, no doubt. All right. Before we go, what's coming up this week on techsideline.com? Obviously, a ton of stuff, especially with the game on Saturday.
We'll have a Brandon Patterson video breakdown later today, which I haven't read yet, but he sent it in. I'll be interested because what kind of film do you break down when you've got so many new faces on each side? I expect it'll be a wide variety of Fordham stuff, ODU stuff. I'll have my Q&A tomorrow, which I'm mostly finished with. Hope I can get my work done like by noon tomorrow, and I'm set up for that. And I think I might like go to the river or something, have like a 2.5 day weekend.
Nice.
I've got something sort of on the new transfers, as I mentioned before, what they've brought to the program in terms of, veteran leadership and an example to serve for other younger players. And tomorrow I'll be doing season predictions, so I'll have stuff on the record, some over-unders, whether I think they're going to hit. I'll go through each game and predict each game because people like to see that kind of stuff. So I'll make a season prediction record, and then people can mock me at the end of the year when I'm incorrect about that.
Awesome. All right. Well, that wraps up episode 307 of the Tech Sideline podcast. Fellas, enjoy the game. Chris, you'll be there as a fan. Andy, obviously, will be up on press row, so enjoy it. Morgan, you enjoy it. And looking forward to some football on Saturday.
Finally.
No doubt. All right, that wraps things up. Episode 307 of the Tech Sideline podcast. For Morgan Gay, Jack Brizendine, Andy Bitter, Chris Coleman, I'm Giovanni Heater. We'll see you next time.